this, I wonder, Barbara, what do you think your role is in looking as a community activist? How do people, there are women in here and men in here now, what should they be doing to go back into their communities to actually create a stir?
Very simple, as I shared earlier, around the kitchen table. That's how it really starts. It starts in your home. It's interesting when I look at the word voice, your voice matters, is that you have to use an opportunity to engage with others. So you take a group and you start talking about it. And that's how it starts. I have a group, a platform called the Girlfriend's Gratitude Tea. And we talk about politics over tea. Although I may teach etiquette, we talk about politics because our voice matters. So you take a group of women, 5 of us here, and we have different opinions. But if the 5 of us connect with you 5 over here, and you 5 over here, and you 5, we now have 50 women that have a loud voice that can make a difference. And that's how it begins. And as we talked about local politics, know your elected officials in your area. If we ask you right now, do you know how to reach your county executive? Do you know how to reach your mayor? You're shaking your head, and I'm glad you did that. You need to know. It's so easy to find out that information. If not, ask us. We'll tell you who you elected official are, and that's how you need to start, right there.
So, Catalina, now, as we're looking at candidates, whatever
You ain't messing with everybody else like this. I put my good hair on.
I know, that's what I'm saying. And I don't know what she look like tomorrow.
I got a totally different wig on tomorrow. I'm just telling you now.
But how should we be looking at candidates? How do we look at, we do, the reality is we have Democrats, Republicans, Independents, Green Party. How should we be looking at all of these different organizations and how they're impacting our communities?
The first thing I would say, especially to this audience, is if you believe in the myth and the unicorn of the Black agenda, make today the last day that you do. We are not a monolithic people. Our communities are not monolithic, as a result of which the issues in which we need to be looking for to vet our candidates aren't going to be monolithic. So that's step one. Ain't no Black agenda. Ain't no Black woman's agenda either, because we, again, are not monolithic in our existence. When you're looking to vet a candidate, make a list of what the issues are in your community that you want to see changed. And then you go find the person that has the voting record, that has stood on the side of right for that type of change through the body of work of their career. You can go see how they voted as a council person, how they voted as a state delegate. And if they're running for office and they've never held an office before, look at where their charitable giving has been. Look at where their philanthropic and their volunteer and community work has been. Because you don't have to be elected before to be good as an elected official, but you have to vet your candidates and don't look at only the ones in the party that you're registered to. Sometimes, like in Maryland, we're in a closed primary state. I ran for mayor of Baltimore in 2011, but as an independent. I don't believe in the Democratic Party. They've run my city since '67, and then for the 35 years I've been alive, I've seen nothing but Black people get poorer, broker, and losing their lives and their land.
Not a political statement.
You asked me how you got a candidate. Ain't that what you asked me?
See, and she knows what I'm going to say when I'm not on this mic. So seriously, when we sit down and look at the young people, how old should we be thinking about getting our children involved in the process and in community development and community activism? You want to start, Jeff?
I think, as what Barbara said, it's around the dinner table. It's around the kitchen table. So when you can start talking, you can start talking about politics.
But when you're talking about politics, Nike, what do you think that we should be doing around that kitchen table? How should that conversation be? So you're talking about the 18 to 25-year-olds, but we had some wonderful little girls down here doing some wonderful things. How do we get them to be conscious?
We have to meet them where they are. And so we have to talk about the things that impact them, such as modeling. And we can say to these young ladies, funding and resources for programs such as modeling and different resources that comes from your local government. So hey, this person's saying they're going to give you money, but this person is not. So that's what voting is about. We did an amazing program at the Kids Safe Zone last week, where we had 2 young women who were 12 and 11 who ran for president of the Kids Safe Zone. So we had the kids there, 3 up to 15 years old, voting. So it was an amazing exercise, both for the person who's going to give you what you're going to vote for the President of the United States. So start the dialogue, but you have to, again, meet them where they are and start with fun exercises that will engage them. We have to engage, educate, and empower them.
That's true. So Catalina, the question too, if you were to look at the five, the five most important topics that we should be looking at as women, as black women or women of color, and for our families and our communities, what would you say they would be?
Just five.
I'm just saying five for right now. Well, you got more? How many more you got?
I could go all day, but
So can we do, you want to do 10?
No, I'll do five. I'm sure Barbara has the answer to. The number one is pay equity. Okay? Reason being is that as people of color, male or female, we already make less than our white counterparts. But then as black women, we make even less than our black male counterparts. But we are the breadwinners in our home. So pay equity should be our number one issue. Healthcare, access to healthcare. This next president, whoever it should be, will have the ability to make a Supreme Court justice, and the conservatives are already saying they want to overturn Roe v. Wade. We have a right to police our own bodies and make our own choices. The third would be education. Myself, I'm the tail end of the millennials, but I came into this work at 18 like Nike is focusing, and we are the most educated generation of black women, but we can't get a job. Men don't want to marry us because they're intimidated by both our intellect and our income. And so we need to be able in a space where we can take care of ourselves. Also domestic violence legislation, violence against women. There are a lot of antiquated laws in state books around the country that still make it very legal for your husband to abuse you, destroy your property, and traumatize your children. And when we look at what is happening in our urban communities now, that is PTSD. That's what trauma looks like. And the last one I would say most definitely would be that of, since I'm only doing five, let me make sure it's a good one, housing equality. Because if we can only live where they say we can live, and in 2016 where we're supposed to be able to live anywhere we want to, we have to understand the very coded language that is still allowing them to discriminate against us.
So that was actually 6. But that's okay. So, it's really interesting when we sit down and we think about it, that there were 6 very important items. And since we're on this roll, can you give me some additions to that you think would be important for us to be thinking about in this election? I'm going to go to the other all three of you.
I can't, because I would say the education is number one. Because if you don't have an education, unfortunately, it used to be you could have a high school degree and get somewhere, and then it used to be a college degree. And now it really is that higher or master's degree or higher. So I think education is the key issue for our community.
So for funding or education, how? As
Funding.
Important as it
Right, funding.
So how would we go about that?
Who are your legislators? Are your legislators for or against? We have issues in Maryland with funding our public schools, and it starts in elementary schools. You said that in Baltimore City you can't afford to send your nieces and nephews to private school. Why should you have to? You pay taxes. So are our legislators putting money into our school system, our public school system? I happen to have the luxury of having lived in Howard County and one of the best public school systems in the United States. Up north, that's not true. So I think education and pressuring our legislators to fully fund education is very key.
What do you think, Nike?
Economics. We have to talk about, with everything, I say follow the dollar. As far as with African American women, right now, 2016, 1.9 million businesses are run by African American women, because we have to get into the entrepreneurship, because we know the more entrepreneurs we have, the more opportunities and resources that we have. So we can go to better school, we can have better jobs or create jobs for our families and our community, better housing. So we have to talk about, when we look at starting businesses, we need help starting those businesses, because billions of dollars are awarded each year in government contracts. Again, but we have to train our women to go after these contracts and our families, so then they can create more opportunities and more resources. So we have to talk about the economics.
So, but I think one of the things is, do many of us even know how to go about that?
And they're programs. And so which elected officials will set aside a certain amount of funds or programs to help us through those fast tracks and educational programs to get us engaged, involved, and teach us how to go after that funding.
And that's really key, because there's a lot of people, and we sit down and we're talking about this. What's very interesting is that there are a lot of the major corporations that are getting these tax incentives. And how many of you know people who ever got a tax incentive that has a black business? I don't know nobody that got a tax. I know a whole bunch of black business. Nobody I know. You know anybody got a tax incentive to go and build a whole new community and take over streets and buy up blocks, and they get them for $1? But y'all know anybody get $1 for a building? Go anywhere, do any of that? Those are the things.
She does.
I'm sorry. Oh, you knew a black person? How many black people you know bought got a building for $1? I just want to know.
It wasn't for $1, but it was tax credits. It's one of my clients. He owns a trucking company in Cheverly.
Okay.
And,
In Cheverly.
In Cheverly, Maryland, Prince George's County. So he was able to do that. And actually he worked for a large company, corporate, for about 25 years and decided to be an entrepreneur.
Okay, so we know one. That's important. That's important. But that's important when you go to the poll. That's real important when we go to the polls, because the economic development is real serious. I'm going to tell you something else that I think is really important, and this is the pipeline to prison. And that the majority...
Let me add a number
I'm
7.
sorry, what did you say?
I'm going to ask you if you're going to let me add a number 7. If I thought about it afterwards.
Prison to pipeline is really important, and we need to be looking at a lot of those people are in jail for the craziest crimes, for shoplifting a piece of bubble gum. I just saw a 17-year-old that actually did some credit card stuff. He's in there for 30 years. But those people who were up on Wall Street who lost billions of dollars, still walking around and still sitting in those chairs. So when we sit down and we start talking about it, we look at the real numbers and the real impact. Now I understand there are several states